Welcome to the Robin's Nest. Hope everybody had a great Christmas break. I know a lot of folks are getting back to work today. Kids are still out though. Trust me, I know all about that. So, chaos around here. At least it has been for the past few days. We've got a 14-year-old, 14-year-old, 4-year-old, and a 10-month-old. So, having them all at the house at the same time, not in school, is chaos. I love it. It's chaotic. Anyways, since it's the holiday season, there's not a ton going on in the motorsports world, but there is a couple of things that I wanted to touch on, so let's get into it. Alright, thanks for watching again. If you would, like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our videos. We have a ton of content up, so check that out, back catalog and stuff like that. So, anyways, I wanted to talk about Rubens Barrichello. That's the way I've always pronounced it. Barrichello. I guess tomato, to each their own. So, I want to talk about his son. His son announced a few days ago that he's going to be in WEC next year, driving an Aston Martin, a customer Aston Martin. His first year in WEC, the World Endurance Car, or Endurance Championship. And that's pretty cool because when I was growing up, so we didn't watch Formula One much. My dad was not a fan, okay? He had respect and everything for Schumi. He talked about him several times, but we never sat down and watched Grand Prix as a family. We just did it, and it was Supercross, trophy trucks, or NASCAR. And never Formula One. If I watched that, I had to branch out on my own and watch it. But when I did, I always gravitated towards Rubens for whatever reason. I really don't know why, but I always liked him. And so the fact that his son is coming into the big stage, is stepping onto the big stage, is pretty cool. It makes me feel old though. I got to tell you, I'm 35, so not old by any stretch of the imagination. Some folks might debate that, but I don't think it's that old. But seeing these kids, man, the second generation, it's been really prevalent in NASCAR over the past few years. You know, with Chase Elliott, and one that really sticks out in my mind is John Hunter Nemechek, because I remember when I was a kid, he'd be sitting on top of the pit box, wearing a little uniform, a little fire suit. Replicating what his dad was wearing, what Joe was wearing. I remember the U.S. Army one in particular. I always thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, these kids getting into the racing now just makes me feel so old. It's cool to see though. Keep the family tradition going. I'm all about that, man. All about that. If your kids got it too. Hey, and you got years of experience, obviously, in the main game of whichever discipline it is. Rubens, Formula One in that scenario. And I think Rubens did some sports car racing as well, so you pass that knowledge on to your kids, and no reason why they shouldn't be just as good. If you train them the correct way and that kind of thing. So, pretty excited about that. I love WEC. I've gotten into WEC pretty heavily the past few years. I grew up watching NASCAR, hot and heavy. Like I said, Supercross and trophy trucks, but predominantly NASCAR. Over the past few years, I've kind of gravitated away from NASCAR. With some of the stuff that they've implemented with the playoffs and stages and all that kind of stuff. I know a lot of people like that. That's just not my cup of tea, and so I've kind of looked elsewhere for my racing fix, and I've gotten into IMSA and WEC, and so it'll be interesting to see Rubens' son out there next year whipping up on him in an Aston Martin, of all things, which I love Aston Martin. Some little bias there, but hopefully he does good. There was an article on Racer that I read. Shout out to Racer, because that's where I get a lot of my news from. in the industry. So there was an article about Harrison Burton, and there being mixed feelings between he and Woods Brothers, since this was his last year. They effectively fired him, really. And the thing is as far as Harrison goes, from his perspective, I honestly I don't understand why there would be mixed feelings. Like, you shouldn't have any animosity at all whatsoever. I said this back when it happened. I understand when he came into Cup that the talent pool in Xfinity was not vast. Okay, there was a lot of guys there that are good, but at that particular point in time, 4 or 5 years ago, it wasn't super deep. And he ran a couple of years for Joe Gibbs, and the first year I think he won 1 or 2 races, maybe more than that. But the second year he didn't win at all. And the landscape of the Xfinity Series really didn't change much between his first year and his second year. You really had about, at best, 10 cars that could compete for wins on a consistent basis every week, excluding the Cup guys that would randomly show up and whoop everybody, because those are outliers. But your full-time guys, 10 may be generous, but let's just say 10. And he couldn't get it done with Joe Gibbs, which is the best team in Xfinity Series. Let's just be honest about that. It's the best team. Certainly, they certainly have the most factory involvement with their manufacturer, that being Toyota. And so for him not to win, to me, when they announced that he was moving up to Cup, it just didn't make any sense to me. And I know now that it was because of Dex, sponsorship money, and they wanted to be on the big stage, and they were attached to Harrison, so they worked that out with the Wood Brothers. I understand all that, but at a certain point, you got to look at it and say, hey, he's not ready. You know what I mean? He wasn't ready. I think if you asked Harrison, and you got an honest opinion from him off the cuff, don't stick a camera in his face, I bet he would say the same thing, that he wasn't ready. It takes an honest person. It takes a lot to admit something like that. And you look at Haley Deegan, a similar thing. With her dad said several times that they didn't want to rush her up. They wanted to take her time when she was in ARCA, and she moved from ARCA to trucks. The races that she won in ARCA were like last lap passes. I think they were on dirt. I don't think she won on asphalt. I could be wrong about that. Don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure all of her wins came on dirt, and they were late passes for the win. And so she was clearly not ready to move up to trucks, but she made the plunge anyways, and look what happened. And then the same thing happened when she moved from trucks to Xfinity. She hadn't accomplished much of anything in trucks, and then she made the plunge into Xfinity. And not only did she do that, she did it with a team that was not a top shelf team. I'm sure they probably got more Ford factory involvement because of her, but still, it was not AM Racing is a young team, number one, and not heavily financed, so it just didn't make any sense. I think the writing was on the wall fairly quickly that wasn't going to work out. And I think the same thing with Harrison. And this is I'm not talking crap about either one of them. I just want to be clear. I've got nothing personally against either one of them, and I'm not trying to knock on either one of them. It's just a fact. The stats reflect that it was poor decision making by whoever made it, whether it be them, their agents, whatever. So my point is that Harrison shouldn't be upset with Wood Brothers at all. They afforded him 2-3 years, to figure it out, and it never happened. He won at Daytona, but I mean, let's be real. If you keep your car in between the walls at Daytona or Talladega and pointed the right direction, and you don't have a mechanical failure, you can win. Parker Retzloff, that particular race that Harrison won, was in one of the Beard cars, or the Beard car, and they only run plate tracks. And he just about won there. Well, he almost finished top 5. Okay, and that car's got no business running that high. Of course, you can make the argument now too that all the cars are basically store-bought. They're not actually built anymore. They're just clipped together. But still, anyone who says that a spec series evens the playing field is insane. Okay, it doesn't. Maybe on paper it does, but in actuality, the big teams are still going to be successful. That's just how it is. You look at IndyCar, it's the same way. That's a spec series. And Penske still whips everybody. And if it's not Penske, it's Ganassi. You know, it's always the big teams are always going to rise to the top. Regardless of what car you're running, you could build 2 cars in the same shop right next to one another. You give one to Penske, you give one to Beard or Live Fast in the Cup Series. The Penske car is going to outrun the other one every time. You could put, well, I would say Joey Logano, but you could put Ryan Blaney in a Live Fast car up against a Penske. Put BJ McLeod in the Penske. The Penske's still going to outrun him. It's just how it is, and that's all down to money. At the end of the day, say what you will, those who spend the most win the most, and that's just a fact of life. I grew up around it. My father raced in Supercross back in the 70s, and every once in a while, you know, he told me several stories of where talent made up for the shortcomings of equipment and money. He and my grandfather, they had a pickup truck, an open back pickup truck, no cover. The trailer that they used was just a car hauler, an open car hauler with a couple bikes on it and all their equipment. They would race against guys who would show up in covered trailers, the works, with sponsorship all down the side of it. He'd go out there and compete against guys like that, and every once in a while he told me that he'd smoke them based on pure will and want to. But I wanted to talk about a story that I've mentioned a few times on the channel. I think I made a post about it, and people were asking me and were curious, so I'll just tell the story. So back in 2013 to 2015, I believe it was, I worked for Rick Hendrick, and we got to do all kinds of cool stuff when I was working for him. Like, we went to races all the time, and in particular one year in 2014, I think it was the first Talladega race of the season. I could be wrong about that. It was one of the Talladega races. So my boss came to me and told me before we went out there, he was like, hey, I've got like four or five guys from the business that we're going to put out there in the parade trucks before the race starts, so you can drive the guys, the drivers around the track, you know, for their pre-race parade or whatever, where they stand in the back of the truck and they wave at the fans. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I was like, awesome, why are you telling me that? He's like, well, you're going to be one of them. I was like, okay, cool. Instantly got nervous. Super nervous. And so I thought it was 4 of us. The plan was for the 4 of us from Hendrick to drive the 4 Hendrick drivers. At the time it was Jeff Gordon, Dale Jr., Jimmy Johnson, and Casey Kane. And we were going to drive all 4 of them around the racetrack. You know, so we went to the track, and they had the trucks lined up on pit road. Okay, well, we were all supposed to meet in the garage area, and then from there, someone from the racetrack was going to come and grab each one of us. Our names had already been attached to the trucks, but somehow or another, we ended up showing up late, and so the 3 guys that I was with, they ended up getting Hendrick drivers. But by the time I got over there, my truck had already been taken by someone else because they didn't know that I was going to show up. And so I ended up getting there, and they're like, well, we can put you with somebody, but it's not going to be a Hendrick driver. And I'm wearing like my Hendrick attire at the time. But I was like, I didn't care. You know, I was hoping the whole time that I would get AJ Allmendinger because I'm a huge fan. Always have been since he was in Champ Car. But I didn't. I got put with the last truck, and it was Denny Hamlin. And so the crazy thing, too, is that I think it was the weekend prior to that, or maybe a week or two prior to that, was when he and Brad had a dust up or run in or something. Brad Keselowski. And so, anyways, I'm sitting out there on pit road. There's all these people around the trucks. I had never been on pit road prior to a race before, so I was not used to there being that many people. So it was kind of crazy. It was intimidating, honestly. And so I was sitting out there in the truck, and I'm like, okay, this is nothing. They gave you a safety briefing. There was a person that walked up to the truck, and they would stand there and they would tell you, don't go over 35 mile an hour. Don't saw on the wheel. Don't jerk on the wheel or anything like that. Don't hit the banking in turn 1 or 2 or 3 and 4. Stay on the flat. You know, ultimately, you're responsible for someone who's worth millions of dollars. Outside of the fact that they're a race car driver, outside of the fact that you've seen them on TV, outside of the fact that you know who they are and all that kind of stuff, at the end of the day, it's still someone who's worth millions of dollars, okay? And Denny Hamlin, love him or hate him, he's one of the most successful drivers in NASCAR, so he's worth millions. So I'm nervous, man. My nerves are shot. He comes out and he gets in the back of the truck, and he's got a reporter with him because of whatever happened with him and Brad. And so line starts moving. I never turned around and said anything to him because I was just that nervous. And it didn't occur to me until we got off of pit road that I would be in front of all the fans in the stands as well. And that day it was sold out. So I know, like, I pull out on the track and I know no one's looking at me. They're looking at Denny in the back. But it didn't affect me any. As far as calming me down, because we drove out of pit road and I looked over and I saw all those people. My God, that was insane. And so we get over to turn 1 and 2, and I'm looking at the speedometer the whole time, like, don't go over 35, don't go over 35. I look down at the speedometer, I'm doing 40. And I'm like, oh my God. So I roll off the gas, let the truck slow down. And I'm driving, and I feel like someone's just staring at me. You know, we're in turn 1 and 2. There's no stands over there, so there's no more fans that are watching. I just felt like someone was staring at me. I look up in the mirror, and Denny has squatted down, and he's looking through the back glass of the truck, just staring a hole through me, like he was looking into my soul. So I'm freaking out at that point. I'm like, oh my God, I must have jerked the wheel or something, trying to stay off the banking. I thought I may have, but I wasn't sure. I was second guessing myself. Like, what did I do? He squatted down like that the entire trip back, just staring at me. We got over to to pit road. He jumps out of the back and he walks over there and he's like, man, that was one hell of a ride. So I was like, yeah, it sure was. And I shook his hand and he walked off. I'd never been more nervous in my life. In my life. And so then they tell you, so once you drop them off next to the race car, you drive up around the grid into the garage area. And then you park the truck back there and then they'll take care of it. And then we were supposed to catch like a little tram or cart that was going to take us back to the grandstands. Well, I didn't know that. That part wasn't relayed to me. So we get back to the garage area, I get out of the truck and I'm looking around and I'm like, man, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I know I'm not supposed to be back here at this point because my girlfriend that I was dating at the time was up in the grandstands with my son, so I was like, I guess I need to get back. But then by that point in time they had started the engines and the cars started pulling off pit road, so there was no more going across the racetrack. So I ended up walking from the garage area all the way to the tunnel that cuts under turns 3 and 4. And you're talking about a hike, man, a hike. And then once you get out there to a certain point, there's nothing but just like fields around you. And so I'm out there walking to the tunnel, See these drivers come by. I'm the only person standing out there, so I know they're looking at me like, what the hell is this guy doing? Just moseying along. But you know what? That whole situation, I wouldn't trade for nothing. That was awesome. Once in a lifetime situation. And for anyone who knows me, for it to be a cluster like it was, hey, that's part and parcel. That's wouldn't have it any other way. You know, it was good times. Good times. I do a lot of stuff with Hendrick. You know, when I worked there, quite a lot of stuff. We went to all kinds of races and stuff like that. But I ended up leaving and moved to Mobile, Alabama. But you know, my family, they've, in some shape, form, or fashion, has been involved with racing. Like I said, my dad was in Supercross back in the day. I've got a cousin who's raced at Greenville Pickens in local short track stuff. You know, it's just we've always. My grandfather drag raced back in the day. It's just been, that's us, man. It's in our blood. And that's what I want to do with this YouTube channel. You know, I want to, someone was giving me some ideas once we finish up with the WRC what to do from there. And it's a great idea, by the way, to start doing Dakar. Totally agree. I hadn't thought of that, but that's a really good idea. That's probably what we'll do. But I want to document as much motorsports history as possible. Not just NASCAR, not just rally, not just IndyCar, not Formula One. I want to do all of it. Even Brazilian stock cars. You know, I want to cover as much motorsports as possible. You know, I don't care if we don't make a dime from it. I love racing. And I don't know what I would do if it wasn't a part of my life. Honestly. It's made my family who we are. It's made me who I am. And it's no BS when people say that once it's in your blood, it's in your blood. That's so true, because my middle son, he's 4, he's obsessed with racing. And I tried everywhere in the world not to push it on him. I didn't want to force it on him. Wanted him to, you know, have his own interests, things like that. You know, just didn't want to force it on him. Because I would love for him to be into racing, but I didn't want it to become a situation where I try to force it on him, and then he goes the opposite direction because I'm trying to force it on him. But he's obsessed with it, to the point where we're getting ready to buy him a go-kart to go racing. So it's in your blood. When it's in your blood, it's in your blood. There's no denying that. There's no getting around it. But that's really it. Like I said, there's not a ton of news due to the holidays and everything, but the whole deal with Harrison Burton in particular, you know, I just don't understand any animosity from his perspective. It makes no sense. From the Wood brothers, yeah, I kind of understand a little bit of it, especially, you know, he's been out there talking about, well, I got fired and all this other kind of stuff. Well, yeah, dude, like, you didn't perform. The guy that was in that car before you had better results. The guy before him had better results. I mean, it's just a fact. You cannot deny that. So, let's see how he does with AM Racing next year. You know, I wish the best for him. Let's just put it that way. I hope it turns out great. I would love to see AM run up front, because I like Austin Wayne Self and his family. They're cool people, so I'd love to see that team run up front. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Joey Logano, I think it was Darlington where he ran that car and he finished 5th or 6th or something like that. And so the car's got pace, the team's got pace. You just got to have somebody in the driver's seat. It's no different than, if you follow my channel, I've talked about it several times, Petty Enterprises back in the day, when Greg Biffle drove to 44 for 2 races in 2002 at the end of the season at Rockingham Homestead. Qualified up front, ran up front, should have finished up front in both of those races, but ended up having various issues. But if you have the right person in the car, they can carry it to the front. So anyways, guys and gals, that's going to do it. Hope you had a great Christmas break. Hope the new year goes well. New Year's Eve into the holiday, and then I hope you all have a great new year. Hope 2025 is awesome for all of y'all. I really appreciate y'all watching. Like I've said before, it means more to me than you know. Okay, you guys are awesome. I appreciate your support. I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. Love you guys. And turn on notifications, because we've got a ton of stuff coming down the pipeline. I don't want you guys to miss it. More compilation stuff, crashes, and we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna branch out and do some different things too, not just crashes. I don't want my channel to be just a crash channel. Although we do want to document that, but we do want to, you know, cover some other things as well. So that's what we're gonna do moving forward. So like, subscribe, so you don't miss any of that. It's gonna be pretty good. So thanks for watching. You guys are awesome. God bless. Peace.